All right, viewers, last week we began the conversation about investing in real estate. So this morning we're going to continue the discussion by looking at how to get capital so you can invest and how you get the greatest return on that investment. Joining me are Johan O'Gilvie, he's a real estate dealer. We have Tania Francis, she's a real estate agent, and Howard Smith is a banker. So we put it nicely together. The banker is going to tell us how to get the money, and the others will tell us where to go and invest it and what to expect. Johan, over to you. What is this great mystery called real estate?
Well, first of all, everybody has to live somewhere.
True.
And if you're visiting, you have to stay somewhere.
Very true.
So life begins and ends with real estate.
Yes.
It absolutely does. And when you're getting into real estate investment, the first step is to get pre-qualified from a bank or a credit union if you don't have the cash to buy what you think you want.
Right.
And so that's where Howard would come in.
No, the first step you say is to be pre-qualified. The standards, though, of pre-qualification depends on what you would say, Jamaica would say, what fatten your eye. And for many of us, the first thing we think, like looking through magazines or scrolling through social media, that's the house I want. Tania, how do we dial it back and choose realistically what we can invest in?
Right, so first we have to figure out what the budget is.
Yeah.
Be realistic. You know, based on, which Howard will touch on, based on what you are able to purchase, what you're able to afford in real estate. You know, we have a lot of clients who, yes, they want the Kingston 6, yes, they want the Cherry Gardens, but at the end of the day, you have to be realistic. What you can afford, and then from what you can afford, then you can determine the property that is perfect for you.
Right, and before we go to Howard, Johan, I just want to touch back on the point, it's not always about purchasing new. Investing in real estate could be updating or upgrading where you currently own or live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have several investment options.
Yeah.
Many. Let me touch on one very popular one, which is short-term rental. With short-term rental, you really put yourself in a position to make the greatest gains in the shortest possible time.
Right.
And I'm sure you've heard about Airbnb.
Correct.
If you're going into Airbnb, you want to consider certain things. You want to consider if you're living in an apartment complex, you'd like to find out from that complex if there are laws that will allow you to rent short-term. You have to check that out.
So you own your apartment, and all right, we're going to come back to that one.
Yeah, sure. But
Howard, if on the point Johan makes about short-term rental, and a lot of persons are interested in going into Airbnb, can we walk into Sagicor and say, I want you to make my house Airbnb ready, so run the check?
Well, we will get you to that state. What we look at is that you have decided, and this is your goal, and this is what I want to achieve. Now, as your financial partner, we'll now walk you through to say, okay, how is it that how are we going to get you to that goal? So we'll sit with you, walk you through the entire process, help you to figure out what are some of the costs involved, how it is that we're going to get you that check in the end in order to get that home for you to eventually put it on Airbnb.
And on the point of pre-qualification for that kind of credit support, what are some of the basics that each person, each applicant must have that you can almost self-audit whether you're ready to even come to speak to Howard?
Right. I mean, once it is that you have income, whether be self-employed or employed, you can visit any of the branches. We'll have a discussion with one of our loans officers. They'll assess to see what some of your current obligations are and what exactly it is that you're looking to achieve. And then what we'll say to you is that based on what your income versus the expenses are, this is the maximum in which you can go to one of our real estate companies to say, okay, this is the price range that I'm looking for, and this is what I have been pre-qualified for to help you to make the home buying or home purchasing process a little bit easier.
Because that can also be a very hard process, you know, for those of us who've gone through it. Tania, in terms of trends, reference was made to the Kingston 6 and the Cherry Gardens. By the way, there's a Cherry Gardens in West Central St. Catherine, just north of where Dovecot is. Is that the Cherry Gardens you were talking about?
No, Kingston 6.
Kingston 6,
yes.
Right. So outside of Kingston 6 and some of those, call it what it is, posh locations, where are other areas that people are looking to invest?
Well, I'm happy that you asked that question, because we actually have a project in Hellshire that's in St. Catherine, one of the prime areas in Portmore, Hellshire. It's particularly located on Cavell Estates, which overlooks the Caribbean Sea.
Right.
So, that could be definitely a good investment because a lot of, persons coming in to Jamaica for the sun, sand, and sea. Of course, that would appeal to a lot of those persons, coming in from the Airbnb, sorry.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the projects that you can definitely invest in.
And the trends are different because, for example, viewers, 5-10 years ago, a television segment about this subject would not have 3 panelists this young. So that's also proof that the whole sector has been changing. Yeah. The constant reference to Airbnb also shows that the consumers who will come into Jamaica, whether for business, conferences, or for vacation, have also changed. People want to have a household experience wherever they go, so families want a house to be in for short-term rental. As a proportion, Johan, how many of those enquiries do you get versus people just wanting a house to retire in or their dream home?
I would say at least 30% of all inquiries that come into me are for short-term rentals.
Really? Very good.
And what they're most interested in, I'm giving away a secret now, they're interested in food. So people who have property on Airbnb start posting a little bit of your good dishes.
Your kitchen skills.
Right. And we need to understand that Airbnb includes breakfast.
Yeah.
It's not just about the property. There's a food component to it.
Right.
People come in here like food, they like the sun, they like water, anywhere close to water.
Does any of them, or do rather my grandma, do any of them want to dig the yam themselves and peel it?
Absolutely, they want activities.
Yeah.
And they want to know what are the best activities they can get engaged in.
Right.
That are within close proximity to the property.
As you mentioned proximity, Tania, coming back to you, a lot of the choices, whether for short-term rental or as a home, is dependent on where schools are, right, where hospitals are, right, and other services such as shopping areas are. We don't really have a diffusion of all of those services equally across the 14 parishes. How do you respond to that?
Yes, because I mean, I believe we do. Well, it all depends on the area and in which you are investing in. That's a very important aspect. When you're purchasing into a property, you'd want to know, okay, especially if you have children, kids, what the traffic is like, taking your kids to school.
You just killed Kingston 6 when you mentioned traffic.
Right. So there are a lot of factors to consider when you're purchasing into your home. Right. And so you'd have to ensure that you're making the right decision whenever you're purchasing or investing in real estate.
Final question, coming back to you, Howard. Another thing, we mentioned a trend in terms of younger people leading these conversations now. Another thing that is different from my grandparents' generation is that people don't buy a house to live and die and have their children and grandchildren growing that much anymore. So the frequency, like 5 years of this house has become boring. Now I want to sell it, reinvest. Are your services attuned to that, or it's a one-time lick kind of a situation?
Oh no, we're definitely attuned to that because each person coming in would have different goals, and what it is that as a mortgage provider ourselves, once you walk into a Sagicor, you have the flexibility of discussing a range of different mortgage options. And it's not limited to a one-time. As you said, the market has changed. Persons are looking not just to purchase for their own home, they're also doing investing. And we do offer those sorts of solutions for investment as well.
Awesome. Guys, I want to thank you very much. And another occasion, we'll also speak about commercial real estate investment, because that's also a biggie with the whole concept of co-working spaces and stuff like that. All right, so let's, Tania opened this one when she mentioned traffic. So let's see how the traffic looks in some sections of the city. We go to our cameras on the street. that's one of the most easily identified intersections. That's Old Hope Road, Oxford Road, Tom Redcombe Avenue, and yep, moving nicely so far. And spinning around now, that is Oxford Road and Lady Musgrave. We can see that that is going to build up very quickly, so I hope if you're on the road, you're already dropped the children off and on your way to the office. And that's it for our traffic this morning.